Hello everyone and welcome to what I guess is week 12. What we're going to do here is basically an expansion of what I did last week with this same motel image. This portion of the class is really sort of, as obviously we sort of talked about last week, heading into collage. As you can see up here on my motel sign, I kind of am starting off where I left off from last week. This, if you remember correctly, is a selection, or what is commonly referred to as our dancing ants. It represents an area in the image that we are potentially going to work with. What we're going to be doing today is doing a few different types of collages with this motel sign. If you look up here, you'll see that I also have clouds.psd. This is just sort of a basic image that I often use with the motel image, and that'll be uploaded to D2L as well. So you need these two images. Specifically, you need your motel version from last week. I have my quick mask, my very accurate version of this selection loaded up and ready to use. A couple things before I head into this. Remember, I created this via the quick mask, which was the sort of color representation of the selection. A few of you emailed me and said, oh, I can't save my quick mask. You'll note that if I go to select, save selection, that I can't save that. And the idea is that this quick mask is not actually a selection. It is simply a visual representation of a selection. And toggle back, you remember I sort of called this a toggle. Wait for it there. And when I hit my little quick mask down here, when I toggle, I should be able to go up to select. Now I can save that selection. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that before we head into the next part. Now, as I said, we're going to be doing a couple different types of collage here, and you're basically handing in this motel for for the sort of exercise part 2 of the sort of exercise portion of the project. Remember, project 5 is collage. You're going to be graded as a whole between these 2 weeks, last week being the selections and this week being the kind of collage portion of this image, as well as your project 5. Please note project 5 is up on D2L. I'm going to be doing a separate video kind of going over project 5 and specifically the sizing and resolution issues with that project. This video, which should be just one video, I think I can squeeze it in the 15 minutes, is really sort of the collage aspect, or the sort of technical aspect of collage. So first and foremost, you should have your motel sign selection up, meaning that if you were to open up your image from last week, you should be able to go to select, load selection, and you should have your quick mask there. Okay, I want to sort of load that up and sort of use it. The idea being that we sort of did that work before, and now we have it sort of at our ready to work with. What I'm going to do is 2 different types of collages. One's going to be I'm going to collage into this motel sign. The other is going to be collaging actually onto the clouds. I'm actually going to do 2 versions of collaging onto the motel and 1 onto the clouds. Note that you're going to be handing in both of these images. Okay, so let's start with some simple stuff here. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to do that by going to my zoom tool, which looks like a little magnifying glass down here, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag. Okay, and I'm doing that so you can sort of see the edge here. Okay, this first image that I'm going to sort of collage into is basically using the shape of the motel sign and collaging into it. Okay, this into it idea is important, and you're going to sort of see how and why it's important once we get to the actual paste. However, I want to note here, and I did a pretty good job at selecting this thing, but if you can sort of see on the screen, hopefully, and you probably see it pretty good right here, that my selection isn't totally accurate. I want to be a little more sort of selective and careful about how I collage with this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Select, Modify, and I'm going to go to Expand. What this is going to do is simply expand the selection by the amount of pixels that I put in there. I'm going to put 2. You might not have that default there, but I'm going to put in 2. And when I hit OK, I want you to watch what happens to the little dancing ants there. They scoot out. What that is sort of allowing us to do is get a much cleaner version of this collage. It's sort of scooting out where we've made that selection. That's going to make this a nice, crisp, clean selection. So I'm going to zoom back out. This looks essentially the same. by zooming in, we know that we've created a good clean, crisp place to collage into. Okay, so I have this motel sign selected and ready. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Clouds, and I'm going to go Select All, and I'm going to simply do a copy. Okay, I've copied this. I'm going to click back on the motel. Okay, and I'm going to do this special kind of paste. Okay, and it is Paste Special Paste Into. Wait for it here. Now, let's take a look over here. This right here is my actual clouds image, and this is what's called a mask. We're not going to worry so much about that mask right now. What I'm going to do is sort of move this image around. You'll see that it takes up the sort of space that the motel sign is. We pasted into that selection. I'm going to grab this image with my arrow, which is sort of the move tool up here, and I'm going to click, hold, and I can move this thing around. Okay, you'll see, it sort of takes a second, that it's only letting the portion of the image that is basically the shape of that motel sign through. Okay, that is a simple paste into. Okay, now that's sort of relative to this image, that's kind of one option. We've selected the motel sign and we've put into it this image. Okay, now a couple things about pasting into in relation to what's called the mask over here. If you've never worked with a mask, which if you haven't worked with Photoshop, you probably haven't, the mask is this black and white thing over here, and the way to think of it is sort of like a stencil. It's sort of letting this particular layer here know what portion of this image should we let sort of show through. The black does what's called conceal, and the white does reveal. I know that's kind of hard to see probably on the screen, but you might be able to see the small motel sign there. The white portion is revealing, and that sort of makes sense over here. Now, if we click on this mask, and this is more for you guys when you get to doing your own collage when you paste into, down here, and I'll sort of scoot this in so it's all in the screen. If we click on the actual mask, which is the black and white portion, down here you'll have what's called image and adjustments, and if you don't have that you can double click on that. Whoops. And you should get a window called adjustment and mask. If you can't find this, this isn't the end of the world. I'm just sort of showing it to you. There's a slider called feather, and if you pump this slider up, it basically, and you can see it sort of happening over there, it sort of softens the edge from which this collage happens. Feather can be sort of overdone, and it starts to look wispy and weird. Generally speaking, you only want to feather by, say, 1 or 2 pixels. Okay, so that makes the edge a little bit softer. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sort of 2 different versions of pasting onto this image here. So what I'm going to simply do is turn that off, this layer, and I have basically my same background all set up, okay, meaning sort of back to the original. Next thing I'm going to do is go to Select, Load Selection. I'm going to put in that quick mask, same thing, okay. Now this time I want to do the opposite. What I want to do is put that cloud image in the background, okay. Now we're going to use that same paste into, but we need to basically reverse this current selection. Okay, so what I'm going to do while I have, and you guys should have this quick mask at the ready, is go to Select, Inverse, and you'll note now, and you can see it on the edges, that it's the background that's actually selected. Okay, the motel sign is not selected, it's simply the background. So I'm going to go back to Clouds, it's already selected, or I could go up to Select All. Edit, copy, it's taking a second, and then come back and do the same, edit, paste special, paste into. You'll see that the exact same thing happened. We pasted into a particular area and we left the motel sign. If you look over here, you'll see these masks are the opposite. Okay. This is the one, and you can turn these things on and off. There's the first one we did. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn the one we just did on. Just like before, I can move this around. I want to get the sort of brighter part of the sky in part of that image. computer's running a little slow. So I have simply the motel sign with that background. You'll note that I didn't do the expand that I did because this version actually sort of chops a portion of the motel sign off, and that's okay. So for the motel version that you're going to hand in, you're going to have 3 layers. Okay, you've pasted into twice. Once inside the motel sign, and that's your quick mask selection, and the other is the background. The background is simply the quick mask selection with that select inverse on it. Okay, I know I did those fairly quickly, but you should be able to go back and sort of watch the videos. This image should be saved as your name underscore motel2.tiff, just the same as last week, but put a 2 on it. Okay, so this is what you're going to hand in for this week for the motel sign. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is take the motel and put it somewhere else. So I'm going to turn these both off. You are going to hand these in as TIFFs, and I should be able to see. Oh, there's both of them on. That's kind of fun. I should be able to see by turning the layers on and off that you've done both of these correctly. I kind of like that actually right there. I will just be looking that looks good and that looks good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is turn both of those off, still using the same image. That one selection that we hopefully did a great job on is serving us for all of these versions of Collage. This is the more straightforward version of Collage. So I'm going to go to Select, Load Selection. I'm going to load up that quick mask again. And this time I'm going to do something that you guys should do prior to sort of paste, when you paste down onto something. I'm going to do what's called Select, Modify, and Feather. We just talked about how feather softens an edge. You generally speaking don't want to do feather too much. So I'm going to actually just do it, yeah, let's keep it at that 2 pixels. I'll hit OK. I am simply going to go Edit. Oops, I should be in the background. You have to be in the background layer there. Edit, Copy, and I'm going to come over to the clouds image, and I'm going to simply do an Edit, Paste. Wait for it. Okay. With the Move tool, you can move it wherever you want. Okay. This is the more sort of straightforward. I'm going to zoom in on this so we can see it. This is the more kind of straightforward version of Collage that if you have played with Photoshop, you've probably seen before. So we pasted that thing down. Okay. Now, a couple little tips in relation to Collage. Note that you guys, over on your layers here, you can bump down the opacity of something. So you can have something somewhat see-through. Okay. You can have multiple layers. The idea behind Project 5, which again I'm going to go through on the sort of sizing video, is that you take an image, and I asked you to use images from Projects 1 and 2. Those are your sort of line, color, shape, and texture. Use images from that to sort of create these composites. Just briefly, and again I'm going to explain this more on the second video, you are to take images from those projects and use them as the base of your collages. You're going to hand in 3 collages, and in each of those collages there has to be at least 2 images. Okay, meaning that if I were doing this project right now, this would be one of the collages. Say Motel was part of my shape assignment and Clouds was part of my texture assignment. Okay, and I merged these 2. Okay, you're going to take 2 images, merge them together, and you're going to do that 3 times. Okay, I'll go over this more specifically, but again, 3 collages, and each of those collages should contain at least 2 images. Okay, those are the basics of Collage as it relates to the selections we did last week. You should be able to, via some images from Projects 1 and 2, really create some unique stuff. These things don't have to be related to each other. There's not as much of an idea behind these in terms of a conceptual or thematic sort of thing, but rather sort of technically well done stuff and visually kind of interesting. In the project sheet I said the best images from Projects 1 and 2, meaning the better compositions, are probably your best images to start with. Again, you can use any images from that, meaning from the whole big group, not necessarily the final ones you handed in. Okay, headed to video 2 here.